entrepreneurships. Now we when we visit the villages in drought-prone areas, flood-prone areas, and cyclone-prone areas, we find so many village women entrepreneurships. They are coming forward. So the strength of women in local preparedness and local community strengthening in disaster preparedness, that is something no other I think no other but actually the counterpart, I think they will have to follow, and women often takes the leadership and efficient leadership. So that is thing. Otherwise also in general, women are better communicators. So whether any kind of a large conference, large congregation, we often prefer that if women is an anchor, women is the host, women is coordinating, we find better discipline, we find better coordination, and that is the reason in the communication sector also, which is a very important in the core of disaster risk management and disaster risk management capacity building, women being the very good communicator. That is the reason when we look at our educational institutions, schools, colleges, we find, I don't say that the men are not good teachers, but we find that women are usually the more popular teachers as compared to the counterparts. So that is a strength. Basically, we have to consider that is a kind of a strength, because leadership is a gamut of several qualities. Leadership is not one quality. Leadership is about several dimensions which which contributes towards efficient delivery or efficient organization. And coming to the last point, I recall 1994. I was attending an interview in the Center for Environment Education in Ahmedabad, and the topic given to us that time, that women make better bosses. So I still continue to think on this issue, that what triggered the interview panel to choose that topic. And that is the reality, that many times we find that there are certain kind of entrepreneurship, certain kind of activities where women can even make better boss as compared to the counterpart. So without having any kind of feeling of competition between men and women, as we all agree that both are contributing to each other, and then we all together make the society. But the strengths and the capacities, specific capacities of women, if we start recognizing, and so that will be a greater benefit to the entire society, entire human generation. And that is very important, that in family also we start realizing that women are the born leader. So I would join with the Honorable Prime Minister, as he very rightly included this topic in his 10-point agenda, and it actually requires a wider acceptance and understanding by all of us in the society, and look at the strengths rather than only highlighting the weaknesses. Thank you very much, and over to you, Dr. Rachna.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Anil Gupta. Very interesting, and I agree with you that the best strategy would be to utilize the strengths of women. Vulnerabilities are often talked about, but how many of us talk about the success stories? So thank you once again for broadening our horizon. And now the floor is all yours, Ms. Silky, young professional from NIDM and moderator of today's program. Over to you, Ms. Silky.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rachna ma'am, for such a smooth functioning of this inaugural session. And now, with the permission of our honorable patrons, I would now begin with our technical session. And to do so, I invite Professor Girish Chandra Mishra, who is Assistant Dean, School of Sciences at OP Jindal University, Raigad. Dr. Mishra has more than 25 years of experience in teaching and research. Sir has penned more than 30 research papers that have been published in reputed international journals. Beside this, several students are also engaged in PhD under his supervision. Sir, I welcome you to this webinar, and over to you for your presentation, please.
Thank you, Ms. Salki. We have heard a very beautiful thought about the women's and DRR by Sri Anil Gupta sir, and also by ED sir. So thanks a lot. मेरा पीपीटी दिख रहा है क्या? Is it
Yes, sir.
visible?
Yes, sir.
Please,
Yes,
please
Yes,
go
sir.
ahead.
Visible.
Okay. Thank you. So, a very good morning to all the participants and dignitaries presenting this wonderful webinar. I would like to start with the Shiva and Shakti, Ardhanarishwar. We know that Shiv represents Purush while the Shakti represents Nari. And we know that कि without the combination of Shiv and Shakti, कोई भी काम पूरा नहीं हो सकता है. So that's why we are thinking about the women's empowerment and women's participation in DRR. So it is essential to mobilize women's leadership in DRR. Disaster risk reduction is a fundamental pillar of sustainable development and requires an all-up society inclusive approach. Disaster affect men and women and boys and girls differently. A gender perspective to DRR helps focusing attention on the distinct gender-specific capacities and vulnerability to prevent, prepare, comfort, and recover from disasters. In many contexts, gender inequalities constrain the influence and control of women and girls over decisions governing their lives, as well as their access to resources such as finance, food, agriculture inputs, land and property, technologies, education, health, secure housing, and employment. Due to existing socio-economic conditions, cultural beliefs, and traditional practices, women are more likely to be disproportionately affected by disasters, including increased loss of livelihood, gender-based violence, and even loss of life during and in the aftermath of disasters. So, consistent advocacy over the last 10 years has resulted in an increasing acknowledgement of the constructive role of women in disaster risk reductions. So that women and girls, like men and boys, possesses skill and capacity to prepare for, respond to, and recover from crisis, and to manage risk and build resilience. So the capacity and knowledge of women and girls play an important part in individual as well as community resilience. This is an important departure from traditional views of women and girls as inherently vulnerable and passive recipient of development and humanitarian assistance. So promoting women's equal participation and women's leadership in DRR through gender responsive governance at national and local level, and state level is paramount as a goal in itself to comply with human rights and ensure that women voices are represented and their needs, interests, ideas are brought to the table. A leading role of women in DRR is a key enabler of community resilience, inclusive, sustainable, and relevant solutions to reduce disaster risk for all. So, the empowerment of women is a critical ingredient in building disaster resilience. So, that's why we are thinking about the women's empowerment. It has been identified that sorry, patriarchal culture as a major barrier which prevent or limit the role of women as decision makers or leaders. Some societies accept that wives and daughters as subordinate to husband and sons. Traditional system consider the role of women as mother and housewives and prevent their opportunities in engage in political decision making, and some societies also believe that women are considered as inferior to men, second class citizens, weaker class, child bearer, and care. So, religious belief influence the role of women in public engagement and decision making. Religious too support the patriarchal society which prevents women's role as decision makers. Many studies found that size of the family and its composition similarly affect the decision-making power of women in households, specifically in developing countries. So traditional society expect the role of women to engage only in family work related to childbearing, caring, and kitchen works. So level of education is an individual characteristic, but education is important since it helps to develop interpersonal skill and knowledge, public speaking, and organizing and coordinating activities among women. And attitude of women themselves limit the role of women engagement in politics and public decision making. So specifically, women in developing countries express a negative interest to play a role in politics and decision making, assuming that politics is dirty and involve violence. So therefore, women's participation and their leadership in disaster risk reduction at the social and institutional level are crucial to make disaster risk reductions activities more effective. That's why these kind of webinar and FDP programs are required nowadays. Women around the world are paving the way for an inspiring style of leadership that is confident, authentic, and highly effective. It is evident that the countries led by women leaders seem to have been particularly successful in fighting the coronavirus. Whether it be Germany under its pragmatic chancellor Angela Merkel or Finland PM Sanna Marin, who helps a coalition government of different parties, their countries have witnessed not only much fewer fatalities than other countries in their respective regions, but also effectively contained the pandemic. And we also know the roles of our women's doctors and sisters in the duration of the pandemics in India too. So the role of successfully leadership are inspiring to the world as a whole, and the challenges to many of them face while progressing towards leadership roles. In addition to being focused and clear in their decision making qualities such as empathy, humility, inclusiveness, and the ability to communicate effectively make women leaders well suited for leading the way and inspiring the people. The importance and need for women leadership in disaster risk reduction mainly to inspire young minds to be involved and empowered in the society by being an active contributor towards this. Women are especially hard hit by the social impact of environmental disasters. Existing inequalities are the root cause of women's disaster vulnerability. They have fewer resources in their own right and under their own control. They have no permanent place in decision making system and they suffer traditional, routine and gratuitous gender biased operations. By virtue of their lower economic, social, and political status, women tend to be more vulnerable to disaster. To involve women in the disaster risk management initiatives have been taken now. Here I am explaining the role of women in the present scenario and their role in effectively ensuring the disaster risk management. Role of women are important agent for change and need to be further strengthened as such, recognizing and mobilizing their skills and capacities as social force and to enhance efforts to protect their safety and that of their communities and dependents is a major task in any disaster risk strategy. Indian women are the backbone of the rural subsistence economy. Their respective role in family, which is of productive nature, to a large extent make the family and society sustainable, we know. In rural areas, which are more vulnerable to natural hazard, since rural population depend more on the natural resources based for all aspects of life, securing food, water, and fuel are key community concerns which are predominantly taken care of by the women. They must be empowered to do so effectively. The role of women commonly organize themselves to distribute supplies, establish shelter and poor labor and resources to create community support services to meet basic family needs in the emergency period. Their efforts are invisible or go acknowledged. So, Indian women face a number of hurdles in applying and qualifying for aid after a disaster. This primarily because of illiteracy or limited literacy, limited access to information, and how to apply and navigate the bureaucracy in addition to the eligibility requirements. So, women's work in agriculture is often seen as an extension of their domestic responsibility rather than a separate economic activity. In rural areas, which are more vulnerable to natural hazard, since rural population depend more on the natural resources. So, we know that they are actively involved in all the activity related to the food and water and fuels. So, the informal community involvement in disaster resistance, but women are still largely excluded from formal planning and decision making and need to be empowered to do so effectively. In case of any emergency system of delivery, they are not properly consulted, although they are importantly involved in family matters at the time of post disasters and time to aid the entire family. Although women commonly organize themselves to distribute supplies, establish shelters, and other resources for the community supports. So, in majority of instances, it has been found that relief and rehabilitation schemes favor men over women, where priority has been given to property owners, tenants of record, bank account holders, and perceived heads of households. Women's economic conditions become critical because in large number of cases, employment assistance concentrate on workers in the formal economy and business aid is awarded to formal enterprises. The impact of disaster or women's day-to-day work is great. In such a situation, generally support systems such as child care, schools, clinic, public transportation, and family networks are disrupted or destroyed and resulting in an increased domestic work. So, women have historically played a significant role in all stages of disaster and risk reductions. The importance of women's role in every aspect of disaster management, preparatory, response, and recovery phases. There are 6 major areas where women's encouragement is required. First is the participatory decision making, establishing some mechanism to facilitate the voice and influence of gender equality advocate, civil society, and other national machineries in shaping public policy, making financial decisions, monitoring investment, and DRM institutions. Second, the collaborations and partnership, promoting and creating partnership opportunity for collaboration between women and grassroots organizations, national and local disaster management institutions in the development, management, implementation, and monitoring of DRR initiative. Strengthening women's organization and network, recognizing women network for improved capacity and participation in DR policy and program levels with particular focus on building resilience. Next one is the supporting community resilience. Knowledge and expertise should be fully recognized and incorporated into risk reductions plans at local and national level. Engaging men and boys are essential partners in promoting the valuable contributions and leadership of women and ensuring women legal entitlement, providing assistance and services in relations to disaster risk management, such as basic health services, compensation, insurance, social security, credit, and employment, the legal entitlements are required. So, with the disasters becoming a frequent phenomena, the world is witnessing the increasing and pertinent role of social media during times of disaster and crisis. It has become a vital tool in helping government agencies and other rescue organizations by disseminating information to wider audience. Each disaster finds its space on social media for information exchange and play an important role in DRR by informing and raising the public awareness to the forecasting of disaster so as to enable the women wing to be prepared and well communicated to avoid any sort of disasters. So we have already explained the issues to ensure the proper learning technology from the disaster, how to survive experiences, so that in many cases the system appears unprepared and starts from the beginning. The same problems arise and the same mistakes are committed when a major disaster occurs, though there are a few exceptions. Each disaster is different that needs to be understood properly. It is dire need to bring change in these attitude of society because women are just opposite in reality. They are more aware about the disaster risk, resulting this they think about it and adopt necessary strategies throughout the year to mitigate it. Women are able to think about those strategies to face any disaster as they always have to live their lives and manage family with limited resources. Long term and consistent mass awareness through campaigning is very effective to change this kind of discriminatory attitude toward women. It can be done in two ways: mass education, publicity, community meeting, and the second one, designing program with a specific objective to challenge. So we must think that women are often the drivers, as Professor Anil Gupta says, strong networker, managers, organizers, caretakers in the community. However, when you talk about disasters at the highest level, the ones who are talking and making the decision tend to be men. Imagine if the world begins to release all the knowledge and capacity of the little over 50% of the population who are women and girls. The return on such an investment would be huge. It has been noted that women's group that participate in emergency relief, resettlement and reconstruction effort following a natural disaster acquires significant knowledge and expertise that can greatly benefit communities that subsequently experience similar crises. When mechanisms are established for promoting the transfer of this knowledge from community to community, poor women are enabled to come out of their homes and from groups to access their situation, organize and participate in the range of decisions and programs. When disaster strikes, the opportunity to decrease women's marginalization arise early on when norms of social control and male-dominated family structure are temporarily disrupted and weakened by the chaos that ensues. If affected women can meet and benefit from the experience of other women who have managed to deal successfully with disaster-related issues, much valuable time can be saved and mistakes can be avoided. Women have a definite role to play in disaster relief and reconstruction activity. Considering this is a new approach to disaster need to be developed out of disaster research, planning and practice should look into their vulnerabilities and requirement. It is my hope that these deliberations will enable practitioners, policy and decision makers to address gender related challenges in DRR and that it will inspire more women and men to join the cause of disaster risk reductions and resilience. That the role of women in disaster risk governance is vital for an effective governance and resilience through which the disaster management will be more enriched and effective as a whole. And I think this is the thought of the whole Honorable Prime Minister's 10-point agenda and the agenda number 3. So it is accepted that women are not only a valuable role model but also be powerful agent of change at national and global level. Even though women participate in economic activities, their role in decision making is still at lower level. The major argument for increasing the role of women in public administration and decision making is due to its ability of enhancing the government responsiveness and effectiveness. This in turn helps in achieving inclusive development and democratic governance that helps in improving trust and confidence in government institutions and increasing sustainability and responsiveness of public policies. Furthermore, women leadership ensure inclusiveness of their interests and properly address their issues in order to enhance the role of women in governance, especially in DRR context. The first step, the basic step would be to identify the barriers, and that prevents their role in decision making, governance, and any DRR reform. So thanks a lot for listening me. Thank you for providing me such opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for this very enriching presentation on role of women in DRR. And it was a really wonderful presentation. And I hope the young ladies listening to this presentation are benefited with this talk, and they will be encouraged to work in the field of disaster management. So thank you very much, sir, for coming and delivering your talk. Uh, our next speaker is Mr. Ashish Kumar Panda, sir. Sir is a faculty at ECDRM Division at National Institute of Disaster Management, New Delhi, and he is a Central Secretariat Service Officer with an MBA in Disaster Management. He is pursuing PhD in Climate Change field. He has more than 6 years of working experience in Disaster Management Division of MHA, and he joined NIDM as a faculty member in September 2019 and looking after the Forestry, Biodiversity and Animal Inclusive Disaster Risk Reduction section of ECDRM Division at NIDM. Sir, over to you for your presentation, please.
Thank you, Shilki. I'm audible?
Yes, sir.
I'm uploading my presentation, please. Can you see the presentation, please?
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Full mode, na?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you very much for having me here. I will be speaking about the climate change and its possible impact on women, and with respect to what kinds of issues and challenges will be there with respect to disaster risk reduction of women. With respect to that, we all know that climate is changing. This is a natural process, dynamic process, but because of our anthropogenic issues, our own contributions with respect to GHG emissions and things like that, the speed of that climate change is increasing like anything, and the frequencies and intensities of natural disasters, man-made disasters as well, because there is a thin line between man-made and natural disasters that is eloping right now. So we can't distinguish between these two kinds of disaster, but this intensity is increasing like anything. We are going to study in next 20 minutes with respect to the impact upon the women with respect to their DRR. Two beautiful quotations I will start with. Women and girls account for over half of the 200 million people affected annually by natural disasters, and they play very, very significant role in all stages of disaster and climate risk management that we have known in the past few speakers that we have that they have spoken about. Women's actual and potential contributions to disaster risk reduction, their leadership as first responders, and their central role in community resilience are untapped assets in disaster risk reduction and resilience building strategies. So if we talk about climate change, if it is catastrophic storms, it is severe droughts, it is sea level rise, put together, it destroys the lives, homes, and businesses of the local community, stifles rural livelihoods, and also puts low-lying areas and islands at very aggravated risk factor zone. So one report says that as far as 2030 to 50 is concerned, that per year, probably 2.5 lakh climate-related deaths is going to be observed because of the reasons of malnutrition, because of the reasons of malaria, diarrhea, vector-borne diseases, and heat stresses and things like that. The climate is changing, and the effect is coming to the world's poorest and those in vulnerable situations, especially women and girls. They bear the brunt of environmental, economic, and social shocks, because they are the persons who are last person to eat, last person to rest, last person to be rescued in a disaster kind of situations. They face greater health and safety risks as water and sanitation systems become compromised in disaster situations. They take on increased domestic and care work in the times of disasters because the resources become scarce, and all this manual responsibilities, we man folk, we give to the women in the times of disasters. On the opposite side, the kind of experiences they have as early adopters of many new agricultural techniques in the times of disasters. They are the first responders in the times of crisis. They're also entrepreneurs of green energy and decision makers. Put together, the kind of indigenous knowledge that women carry, if we utilize these kinds of experiences and knowledge of the women, then probably we will be having a better society with respect to disaster reduction. Their contribution that is overlooked has to be taken care of as far as humanitarian or climatic actions are concerned. One report says that out of 1.3 billion people living in poverty across the globe, 71% of that population are women. In the urban areas, 40% of the poorest households are headed by women. And as far as food production is concerned, their contribution is to the tune of 80%, 50 to 80%, but they own less than 10% of the land. In rural areas, if you see, they are highly dependent on the forests, on the greenery, on the nature-based solutions with respect to their livelihood, with respect to their household water supply, fodder, fuel, energy for cooking, heating, and food security. And then if you see the areas of Near East, the women contribute to more than 50% of the agricultural workforce. They're responsible for time-consuming and labor-intensive tasks. If you go towards Latin America and Caribbean side, the rural population has been decreasing in recent decades, but the women are mainly engaged in subsistence farming, particularly horticulture, poultry, and raising small livestock. So limited access to and control of environmental services that is prone to the women folk because of their negligible participation in decision making that has been talked about. They're not involved in distribution of environmental management and benefits. That is the main cause why these section of our society is being neglected in the times of disasters. As far as what kinds of services that can be provided by women in the times of disaster, they are effective actors and agents of change in relation to both mitigation and adaptation. They have a strong body of knowledge and expertise over the years with respect to, like Professor Anil rightly said, that probably they won't be having the degrees and diplomas with them. The kind of upbreeding they get over the years, they have lots of knowledge, lots of expertise with respect to anything, and then in the times of disaster they can be very good leaders. Their responsibilities in households and communities, it teaches us to become the stewards of natural and household resources. They are in a better position as compared to men to contribute to livelihood strategies, adopted climate change adaptations and things like that. What is our job? Our job is to identify gender sensitive strategies to respond to environmental and humanitarian crises caused by climate change. So now we are going to learn about some sectors with respect to climate change that are going to affect the women folk. As far as this food security is concerned, because of the climate change ramifications, it affects the accessibility, it affects the availability of food, utilization, and also food system stability. Across the globe, the women farmers, they are to the tune of 80% participation in the food production processes. As far as the labor sector is concerned, 2/3 female labor will be found in the developing countries. If you go to Africa, it is more than 90%. So traditional food sources, when they decrease in the times of disasters, when unpredictable and scarce food resources are there, so women folk face the brunt of this scarcity of the food because of lack of income, loss of income, lack of harvesting in the times of disasters, and increasing food prices in the times of disasters, then it becomes inaccessible to women and girls, and it turns to malnutrition for them. Women are often excluded from decision making as far as accessing to and the use of land and resources critical to their livelihoods are concerned. This is our responsibility to ensure that food security, non-discriminatory access to resources, and equitable participation and things like that. Their participation has to be ensured, not in terms of participation, but as rightly said by Honorable Prime Minister, the leadership skills has to be inculcated, and those kinds of atmosphere has to be provided to them. As far as biodiversity is concerned, One Millennium Ecosystem Assessment report says that climate change is the dominant factor with respect to loss of biodiversity across the globe. If you go to rural Africa and Asia, women and men are highly dependent on food, on wood and agricultural crops and wastes and forest resources. Then in the times of disasters, because of climate change and increasing natural disasters, fish productions, they decline. It has major implication for artisanal fishers and communities, and women folk are directly impacted with respect to that. Deforestation, people talked about that. Women have high dependency upon the forest with respect to wood, fodder, fuel for their family needs. So because of the disasters, women and girls are responsible for collecting traditional fuels, a physically draining task because it may consume 2 to 20 hours in a week for the women. So they get less time as compared to the men folk to fulfill their domestic responsibilities, to earn money, to engage in politics and other public activities like men folk. So women and girls become more vulnerable to injuries from carrying heavy loads for the longer distances, and also face increased risk of sexual harassment and assault in their efforts with respect to collecting fodder fuel and energy supplemences from the forests. The indigenous people, if we talk about them, especially indigenous women, they have lots of expertise and knowledge with respect to local natural resources. Biodiversity, if we talk about the wealth of knowledge on environment, if we talk about the understanding of food, medicinal plants, domestic animals, symbiotic relations between different species in our ecosystems, if we talk about the awareness of the structure of ecosystems, each and everything, every important aspect of biodiversity, the indigenous women, they have important information that can be utilized by the policymakers with respect to preparing policies and plans for disaster risk management. So greater inclusion of indigenous communities, if we bring them to one common platform and use their expertise, then probably we will be having better utilization of their knowledge. One example I wanted to quote here, this is one competition that is held in the Uttarakhand Garhwal area, Dhasiari Queen Contest. These women, they cut the grasses like anything with the speed. I mean, you would be astonished. So one competition is organized among these women folk, and to bring awareness among them to what kind of grasses has to be cut and how is to be collected. And 1 lakh rupee prize is also given in this area in this contest to bring awareness among the women. So these kind of innovative thoughts can be replicated elsewhere as well. As far as water resources are concerned, you talk about floods, you talk about droughts, it is going to affect the water resources like anything, and women and girls bear the burden because they have the responsibility at the household for fetching water from distant sources. And one important aspect I wanted to bring to the forum here, the arsenic contamination of groundwater in the times of floods. Increased flood levels intensify the rate of exposure to the women folk, brings lots of health hazards to the women. Lesions is one kind of hardening of the skin. Dark spots will be visible on the hands and feet. The limbs may get swollen, and there will be, in some cases, loss of feeling as well. Now, the negative social repercussions of these things is women can be shunned, they can be excluded. There will be social stigma, and because of their physical appearance, bad appearance rather, I shouldn't use that word, they may be having problem in marriage as well. So inadequate access to water and poor water quality in the times of floods and droughts, this impacts agriculture production, it impacts the care of livestock also, and somehow or the other, it impacts the women folk with respect to their availability. So now, if you talk about the gender equality and health, that increased morbidity and mortality due to heat waves, floods, storms, and fires and droughts, risk of contracting serious illnesses is aggravated. If we talk about the greater incidence of infectious diseases in Uttarakhand because of this climate change and increase in the temperature, you would not have heard the dengue and malaria kind of syndromes in Uttarakhand high areas, but probably now we are observing these kinds of incidences. So climate and geographical distribution of infectious diseases are changing, and it is affecting the women folk. If we talk about the migration from the mountainous states, the man folk move to different locales, different cities, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities for work and other things. They leave women and children back at home, and they have to face the brunt of these changes in the climate. This warmth accelerated the biting rate of mosquitoes, and it is a proven fact scientifically. It speeds up the maturation process of the parasites that they carry. There are examples in Africa. I spoke about the Uttarakhand issues also, and there is issue of increasing flood may also increase the prevalence of water-related diseases also. So put together, this increase in prevalence of disease aggravates women's caregiving of family. Now they find difficult times whether they have to take care of themselves or they will take care of other family members. So this dilemma is there with the women because of the increase in prevalence of diseases with respect to climate change. This one important quotation I wanted to share with you. Professor E.D. Nadiam sir talked about their control over the population if they have the control. God has given this right to women to give birth to children, but probably if we give them right when to get pregnant, probably they are going to reduce the population increase like anything, and less population, less GHG gas emissions, and thereby providing access to contraception and preventive health care should be one of the many effective strategies used to fight climate change. So this was one beautiful quotation from a woman only. If we talk about migration patterns because of the climate change issues, this is going to increase like anything. I said some examples in the Uttarakhand, the manfolk move from their places, they leave women and children there. So because of internal and cross-border human migration increasing, the impact of climate change upon women is going to increase also. The large coastal population is going to be displaced because of climate change. The sea level rise is going to rise up to some feet by the end of this the 21st century, and areas like Maldives, areas like some areas of Mumbai, then our own Sundarban, these areas are going to be inundated like anything. Population has to move from those areas. One example I can quote, cyclone Nargis of 2008. At the time, 8 lakh people were displaced because of these climate change issues. So migratory consequences will be higher death rates for women in least developed countries. Behavioral restrictions will be there, poor access to information, and it also entails vast changes with respect to land use, physical modification of rivers, water withdrawal from rivers. So these limitations, they further limit the power of women with respect to their movement, with respect to overburden by their tasks that are entailed to them in the times of disasters. If we talk about human rights, the extreme weather conditions are definitely going to be calamitous with respect to human rights consequences also. That world hunger is going to increase, malnutrition will be the important issue. There will be exposure to diseases, declining access to water. And women also have limitations to adequate housing, spurring loss of livelihoods also in the times of disasters. And economic and social rights will be compromised because of the rights to food, rights to health, rights to shelter. There will be competition between men and women in the times of disaster, and because of their biological makeup and poor socio-economic and geographical vulnerabilities, they find it very difficult to fight with their counterpart with respect to getting these rights in the times of disasters. It is a very important key UN priority with respect to safeguarding the human rights of people who live, whose lives are most adversely affected in the times of disaster. And therefore, it is a responsibility that every policy and plan maker has to think about these aspects, basic needs in the times of post-disaster scenario. The importance and the needs of women has to be taken care of. There are 4 criticalities with respect to gender-sensitive responses to climate change. Mitigation talks about curbing GHG emissions from human activities. It can be fossil fuels or deforestation, so that we can stabilize to a safe level. And adaptation talks about activities to reduce vulnerability and build resilience in key sectors. It can be water, it can be agriculture, it can be human settlements. So we have to systematically go in this direction so that we can address gender-specific impacts of climate change in the areas of, it can be food security, it can be agriculture, biodiversity, water health, human rights, and peace and security as well. And technological development, technology has to be advanced. It should be user-friendly, it should be affordable, it should be effective and sustainable, and it should be made in such a fashion that the issues and challenges with respect to women in the times of disasters, with respect to climate change, are addressed specifically. So as far as financial mechanisms are concerned, it should be flexible, and it should definitely reflect women's priorities in the times of disasters. And when we make financial plannings for women, their participation in this planning process should be taken care of. Gender analysis of all budgetary activities and measures is very, very important. There is a term of gender budgeting also. Whatever money is given by central government to the state government, subnational levels, some portion of that budget has to address gender issues also. If we talk about energy, energy is a very important sector. Renewable energy is a key climate change mitigation technology. As far as urban sectors are concerned, if you think of energy, it is basically to operate appliances, equipments, and big machines and things like that. So because of biological makeup of women, women are not expected to be involved in energy sector as far as urban sector is concerned, as far as power generation and fuel distribution is concerned. But if we go to the subnational levels or district and village levels, you will find the developing countries, poor countries, most energy comes from the traditional biomass fuels like wood, charcoal, agricultural wastes. And to collect and manage these kinds of fuels, women are sent to the forest areas. This is strictly the business of women, and men don't involve themselves in these kinds of business. So this is clear kind of dichotomy. When this is urban sector of energy, then only men are involved. When it is domestic sectors at the rural levels, collecting biomass fuels, it is only women, they are given this responsibility. So this brings a word gender blind with respect to the energy sector as far as these two classes are concerned. The gender equality and financing and mitigation adaptation strategies are concerned, then significant resources are required if you go for long-term planning. Short-term plannings, the available balance of funds are there with the local governments, but as far as long-term plannings are concerned, we have to find mechanisms with respect to finances. Gender inequality in access to social and physical goods is very, very important. Gender gaps in education, their income, their time use and leisure is also very important. And gender differentiated roles in our society, that is very, very prevalent. It will take huge many years before we change the mindsets of people, but we can start from like they say, charity begins at home. We can start from our home only. There should not be any differentiation with respect to male and female child as far as their differentiated roles are concerned with respect to their biological makeup. With regard to empowering and investing in women, these are very, very important areas to combat the effects of desertification and paving the way for poverty alleviation. They do not have sufficient access to funds to cover any kinds of weather-related losses, any kinds of climate change adaptation practices. So we have to give them wherewithal, we have to bring them to those platforms where policies are made. And also we have to ensure that they get proper participation and due acknowledgement with respect to the services they are providing in these areas. If we talk about the emergency measures during natural disasters, because of their vulnerable conditions with respect to socio-economic and geographical conditions, the biological makeup, in the times of post-disaster scenario, more women die in the times of disasters. You take any example, Asian tsunami, Hurricane Mitch, or things like that. In a post-disaster scenario, women are usually at high risk of being placed in unsafe area, overcrowded shelters, and due to lack of assets also, probably their needs are not identified in a proper manner. And there are some disasters like cyclones and floods where it requires mobility. The population has to be evacuated from one place to another place, but because of their cultural constraints and their movements are hindered, so their timely escape is compromised. So they also don't get access to the proper shelter, proper security concerns are there with respect to women. So we have to identify these areas and also accordingly address these areas. Women often avoid using shelters because of fear of domestic violence, because of fear of sexual violences in those areas. One toilet is one very important aspect that is not taken care of in these kinds of shelters. So there is direct correlation between what is a position of a woman in society and their likelihood of receiving adequate health care in times of disaster and environmental stresses. So these needs to be identified. So last two slides, way forward should be, we have to incorporate in any case the gender perspectives in our national policies, plans, and not only it should be good looking plans at the book level or the report level. It should be while it is being implemented, we have to see this gender bind, this gender bias or gender budgeting issues very appropriately. We have to carry out systematic gender analysis also, collecting and utilizing sex disaggregated data. We have to establish gender sensitive benchmarks also. Indicators have to be there so that whatever we are implementing, we are getting the outcome properly or not. We have to develop practical tools to support increased attention to gender perspectives. Then consultation, participation of women, if they are forthcoming, then they should be made party to this participatory approach like it is talked about. And their role has to be identified and they have to be made accountable with respect to what they are going to get in future with respect to their own development in the times of in a post-disaster scenario. We have to allow them to contribute their unique and valuable knowledge, indigenous knowledge I talked about, and gender inequalities with respect to IT sector, with respect to credit financing sector, with respect to any kinds of extension services. We have to allow them access to these kinds of resources, so that any kinds of developmental process gets their equal participation, equity-based participation. That is very, very important. Training, capacity building, skill development, that is some other important areas where their role has to be increased, enhanced, and they should be given proper share in these kinds of activities. This is the last slide. Women's priorities and needs have to be reflected, have to be identified in developmental planning and funding, and part of decision making at national, local level regarding allocation of resources, uses of resources, accumulating resources, how to use it in future, that decision making, and with respect to climate change initiatives, that has to be given to the women. Gender sensitive investment, that is very, very important, I talked about. Then funding organization and donors should work in such a fashion that women specific circumstances has to be identified while developing and introducing technologies related to climate change adaptation. We have to remove economic, social, and cultural barriers in this regard. Women have to be involved in developmental of new technologies also. It should be women friendly, it should be user friendly, it should be in local language so that they can utilize without any higher kind of education having been provided to them. At national level, we have to mainstream gender perspective into national policies, strategies, and sustainable development goals also. This is last quotation, that climate change, you talk about demographics, you talk about water, food, energy, or any kind of natural resources, global health also in the times of this pandemic, then women empowerment, put together, all these issues are intertwined. They are very much associated with each other. They have to gel with each other. We cannot look at one strand in isolation. So instead, we must examine how these strands are woven together so that collectively we can take women along with us with respect to moving towards in a direction where we can think of a society where women are worshipped like they used to get worshipped in the times of our important past. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Over to you, Shilki.
Thank you very much, sir, for this very beautiful presentation, enlightening us about the role of climate change on women, how it's going to affect our women community. And you rightly said that the actions and contributions are overlooked. The women, what we do, and it is being overlooked certain times. So thank you very much for coming and delivering your deliberations and pointing this out. And now moving ahead, our next speaker is Dr. Rachna Dua, Associate Professor, uh, Department of Geography, Shyama Prasad Mukherji College. Her areas of interest are development studies, environmental studies, agricultural development, dry land farming, and she has teaching experience of over 26 years, and she has supervised PhDs and evaluated theses. So, and she also has authored a book called Levels of Agricultural Development, Spatio-Temporal Variations in the Level of Agricultural Development in Haryana. She has undertaken university projects and attended many conferences and seminars. She is a life member of National Association of Geographers India. So, ma'am, over to you for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shilpi. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you once again for giving me this opportunity to be the guest speaker. And I'm also thankful for the useful insights shared by the speakers before me. Professor Girish and Professor Ashish, your PPTs, they were research oriented. I'm really enriched today. And my focus area will be to inspire my young girls or youth through my talk. I would try to, do justice to it. And so I'm very, very delighted to be, part of this program, especially being women myself and from a women's college and speaking on a topic related to the role of women. In next 15 minutes, I would like to draw your attention towards the dimension of disaster risk management, which is very important part of our Prime Minister's 10-point agenda, And this is to encourage greater participation and leadership of women in disaster management. This includes disaster preparedness, response activities, etc. Now, you all know earlier across the globe and as also in India, disaster management was always seen as post-disaster activity, right? Comprising of 3 R's: relief, response, relief, and rehabilitation. However, in the past decade, the focus of disaster management has shifted to pre-disaster planning, preparedness, and mitigation, leading to disaster risk reduction. So this has been understood as a paradigm shift in the approach of management of disasters. Disaster risk reduction involves reducing disaster risks through reducing their causes before it starts, before a disaster starts. That is why it is said prevention is always better than cure. We need to manage the risks and not only the disasters. National Disaster Management Plan of our country, 2016, is one of the recent and excellent planning frameworks of India in the field of disaster management. In many countries of the world, disaster field, we all know, is male dominated. The participation of women in the planning and monitoring emergency programs, rehabilitation projects, is still on a low-key profile. Women have worked and succeeded in occupation long seen as the province of men. Crux is that women are actively leading to the foreground in all major fields. Why not disaster risk management? Somebody's audio is on. May I request?
I turned it off.
Yeah, thank you. And today, we have gathered here to talk about the role of women in disaster risk management. Remember, women are the ones able to mobilize the families and communities given the right tools, knowledge, and empowerment, and shared beautifully by Dr. Ashish in his PPTs. We all are aware of pre-existing vulnerabilities in everyday life of women. These vulnerabilities get augmented, increased in the wake of a disaster. So we need to address them. While disasters pose threat to everyone in their paths, they often have harsher impacts on women. So this is due to large part to gender differences in the capacity to cope with such events and insufficient access for women to information and earlier warnings. So this gendered asymmetry, I would call it as gendered asymmetry in vulnerability to disaster risk, is rooted primarily in biological, economic, social, educational, infrastructural, informational, and political power imbalances in society. This we all know. These factors translate into women having lower level of access to economic resources in general, and in particular, lower level of access to education and information that would allow them to read and act upon disaster warnings. So this calls for a need to equip them to be strong in the face of adversity. So they have to be transformed from helpless victims to active and resourceful disaster responders, and I would call it risk managers. We also think it is the duty of only the government, it's the duty of only the administration to deal with it. No doubt it is, but one cannot, afford to wait and watch and do nothing about it. So women must be part of it, and we have to build their capacities. We have to promote this thing. UNDP describes capacity building as the creation of an enabling environment. This enabling environment includes environmental appropriate policy, legal framework, institutional development, including community participation, and of women in particular. It adds that capacity building is a long-term, continuing process in which all stakeholders participate. Capacity development has been incorporated as the important theme in India's disaster risk management plans and includes training programs, curricular development, awareness, mock drills, and large-scale disaster response exercises. While designing the strategy again, it has to be designed by absorbing different views of women so that different vulnerabilities, which we all are mentioning today, they can be addressed. Women, we all know, have unique strengths and insights. So we must train a large number of women volunteers to support special needs of women. Now, often, we talk about vulnerabilities of women. They're frequently highlighted. Now, their contribution to building, disaster resilience has often been overlooked. Success stories must be told to the youth, especially girls, so that they not only become aware, but also feel encouraged and motivated to participate. I'm really pleased to see the slides of these success stories shared by Professor Ashish. Media can play a very important role in bringing forth these success stories. Each disaster, we find its place on the media, social media, and plays an important role in DRR by raising the public awareness to the forecasting of disasters. So there are many examples from across the globe, as well as India, where women have demonstrated leadership quality during different phases of disaster management. They must be bring forth. Also, between the year 2013 and 15, India experienced more than 6 natural disasters across 6 states, including floods, landslides, droughts, cyclones. Community preparedness in disaster risk management became a priority for the country that ensured equal participation of women and men in disaster planning and response. To give you an example, cyclone shelter management and maintenance committees, they have been formed at the village level, comprising both women and men, to provide search, rescue, first aid, support to these each of these shelters. 149 village level task forces were formed in Andhra Pradesh from youth volunteers. And let me share, 50% participation in these were from women groups. An extensive network of disaster management volunteers and task forces have been formed that have equal female participation. Another way to achieve this is, as I said, my focus is to inspire the young girls, to educate young girls in disaster risk management, because young girls can bring resourceful, innovative ideas to disaster preparedness by the application of science and technology. We often forget the role of science and technology in managing the risks. They are very well connected, ambitious, ready to take the accountability. Introducing disaster management in the curriculum of schools, colleges, and some of the professional courses is the step in the right direction. I am from geography discipline, and I would like to share that we have, a theory and a practical paper entitled Disaster Management. And practical paper is disaster management through a field report, through a project. And in this paper, one of the objectives is to evaluate the various dimensions of disaster management through the field work. And I'm sure my young girls over there who are part of this program also, after they pass out, will definitely contribute to the society. Girls, this field is open to you. Being geographers, you are not only good at map skills, but you also are very well versed in tools like GIS and remote sensing. This way, you can contribute to our Prime Minister's 4th agenda in his 10-point agenda for disaster risk management, which talks about mapping. Just go through it today. You can develop maps for all major hazards in a standardized format to facilitate disaster risk reduction. Also, capacity enhancement programs, training and awareness programs like this, which is happening today. So taken up by SPM College and NIDM can help you all further. I also advocate for more research in disaster risk management, as plans cannot be same for two different disasters. So this can be achieved by having expert faculty in the area. Another initiative would be providing incentives to young girls to learn more about disaster management through appreciation, awards, prizes, and other forms of recognition for their efforts. Insurance schemes are increasingly playing visible role as a means of providing economic security to women against natural disasters. We in SPM College for Women are committed to provide all girl students an environment which empowers them to become agents of change. Over its more than 50 years of existence, SPMC has empowered several generations of young women. I would like to share the Department of Geography of our college conducted a mock drill on earthquake and stampede in collaboration with District Disaster Management Authority West in 2019. 50 members from DDMA and civil defense personnel and all the students, teaching and non-teaching staff of SPM College participated in the mock drill. NCC and NSS students also helped us in this exercise. There are other many good practices followed by our college to empower these young girls to become capable citizens. We have Sambal Financial Assistance Scheme, Chetna Enabling Unit, Samta Embracing Social Diversity Unit. We also provide 17 awards and 15 scholarships. The college also provides financial assistance. So all these activities are to empower women. The NSS team of college also has excelled in many social services in West Delhi. The services of the team have been greatly appreciated by hospitals, orphanages, slums, refugees, homes, etc. So these are just few examples to motivate young girls that this field is open to you, but you need more awareness and you need a will to go ahead. So in the end, I would like to say that in India, women's roles and leadership in disaster risk management has increased manifold. And I hope a time will come soon when women and men will be equal partners in disaster risk management. But the real challenge is to transfer the policy framework into action. So with these words, once again, I thanks NIDM for giving me this opportunity. Thank you very much. Over to you, Shilpi.
Yes. Thank you very much, ma'am, for encouraging and inspiring the young minds of college, SPM College, and others as well about this cross-cutting issues of disaster risk management, how they can work well in this field. And it is really a new field in our country, and we really need many young minds to work in this field. So thank you very much, ma'am, for coming and delivering your deliberations. And now moving ahead to our last session of today's program, I invite Dr. Preeti Bansal, Scientist G of Principal Scientific Advisor, Government of India. She is a PhD. She is a PhD in Disaster Communication, Early Warning System, MBA in Human Resources, and Bachelor's of Engineering in Electronics and Telecommunications. Dr. Bansal is an Indian Telecommunication Service Officer with more than 27 years of experience working in telecommunication policy making, telecom equipment, standardization, emergency telecommunications, telecom project management, government financing and procurement, corporate resurrecting, capacity building, and training management. She has also authored a book titled Disaster Communication and Early Warning System. So with with these words, I welcome you, ma'am, over the dais. Over to you, ma'am.
अनम्यूट कर दीजिएगा प्लीज मैम को. शिल्की. Shilki, please unmute कर दीजिए मैम को.
Ma'am, I'm trying, but I think you have to do it.
Already unmute. Am I audible, please?
Audible. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Shilpi. I would like to extend my sincere thanks to Dr. Rachna Dua, who has made my task much easier, actually. So talking in last has many advantages and disadvantages. Advantage, Rachna and my other previous speakers have made it very easy to talk about women in DRR. And disadvantage, of course, what to new to offer to you. Okay, so let me try something from my side. Give me a minute to load my presentation.
मैम शेयर स्क्रीन का ऑप्शन है आपके पास, नीचे देखिएगा.
I'm trying that. Yeah, I'm trying that. Is it okay? Is it visible?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Please.
It's visible. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Is it fine, I suppose? Would I go to share a screen, or it's enough if I go by this mode only? Because sometimes the share screen gives problem.
I think this is visible to everybody. I think this will do.
Okay, thank you very much. So good afternoon to all of you, and I can see a good number of participants present here. Very impressive number, so to say. My congratulations to the organizers of this workshop. Let me start. The topic assigned to me is involvement and leadership of women in disaster risk management. So again, setting up the context with the Prime Minister's 10-point agenda. And I'm quite sure that it might have spoken about that how in November 16, Honorable Prime Minister of India gave this agenda, the 10-point agenda 10 on disaster risk management. And I'm asked to give a presentation to have focus on the point number 3, which talks about encouraging greater involvement and leadership of women in disaster risk management. This is the agenda which was proposed by our Honorable Prime Minister. But if we go to the International Framework on Disaster Risk Reduction and Disaster Risk Management, there are 2 important frameworks. The extent or the current framework is the Sendai Framework on Disaster Risk Reduction. And it came in existence in 2015 and is applicable till 2030. But before that, there was a global framework on disaster risk management, the Hyogo Framework of Action, HFA we call it. So if you look up at the HFA, they have also, in the HFA itself, it was acknowledged that the importance of gender-sensitive disaster risk management policies, plans, program, and decision making. It is very important to involve women at all levels of DRM. And taking it further, the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, they have also recognized importance of women involvement and importance of all kinds of stakeholders, may it be the people with different abilities, people of all genders, of all ages, and with all their different kind of socio-cultural perspectives, they are needed to bring a complete holistic view of any kind of framework. And particularly for women, so that they can provide their women sensitive or the gender sensitive per se perspective to the framework on DRR. And they have written that the women participation is required to effectively managing disaster risk, designing, resourcing, and implementing gender sensitive disaster risk reduction policies, programs, and plans. Adequate capacity building measures need to be taken to empower women for the preparedness of the disasters, as well as to build their capacity for alternate livelihood means in the post-disaster situation. Because as we all understand, whenever some disaster strikes, it affects the livelihood of people in many ways. So these are the important frameworks. They points to the importance of women involvement in disaster risk reduction programs. But despite all these things, despite all these articulations, despite all the different kind of seminars, program, taking note of importance of women involvement, the role of women in decision making is very minimal. If we see the status, we are seeing that not many women are involved in the disaster risk making policies or the disaster awareness.
So, ma'am, sorry to interrupt you, but your slides are not moving.
Okay. Is it moving now?
No, ma'am.
मैम एक बार फिर से अपलोड कर लीजिए प्लीज.
ओके. फिर से स्लाइड्स अपलोड करना है?
हाँ, एक बार ट्राई कर लीजिए, क्योंकि शायद वो मूव नहीं हो रहा तो कोई देख नहीं पाएगा उसे.
अभी देखें.
हाँ, एक बार फिर करें, शेयर करें.
Okay. Is it okay now?
Ma'am, we can't see your slides.
Oh. Can you do it from your side?
हाँ, आप हमें भेज दीजिए मैडम, मुझे भेज दीजिए. ashish.nidm
Okay.
@nic.in कर दीजिए.
I think, okay, just let me try. Ashish, I have sent you some PDF version. Just try to find out.
जी, देखता हूँ.
Okay, could you find out or just tell me your email address?
हाँ, आशीष ASHISH .nidm
Yes, please. At GOV?
@nic.in.
I'm really sorry for this.
Oh, it happens sometimes due to internet and other things. These are new normals under this pandemic, madam. We have to face these things.
I hope we are not considering this as a disaster.
No, not yet. Have you sent, ma'am?
Yes, I have sent. Okay, so people can hear me at least.
You please continue. When it comes, then I will upload.
Yeah.
Please continue.
Okay, so what all have been discussed so far now? Have we discussed the National Disaster Management Policy and other things? And the DRR framework?
Yes, ma'am.
Good. So I was talking about that though all these two important frameworks, the global frameworks, Hyogo framework for action and the Sainte framework for disaster risk reduction, despite the fact that both of these important frameworks and also the UN organizations at various international forums, they all have accepted and given due importance for the involvement of women in disaster risk reduction. So far, the involvement of women that is very minimal. Now, why so much importance is to be given? Why women in DRR is so important? So, as we all know that if we talk about the disaster risk is a set of multiple things: the hazard, the vulnerability of people, the community, the livestock, and the society at large at risk, their vulnerability, and the exposure of such things to these hazards or events. So if we see, if we think about the risk, there are multiple ways to reduce your disaster risk. Either we can prevent the hazard or the disaster. Prevention again is a very wide subject. It talks about many things, the science and technology, intervention, so on and so forth. But if we focus on the vulnerability, this is something where we can do by taking important interventions, science, technology, and of course the policy interventions, and involving people who are at risk. And if we somehow can enhance their capacity, their coping capacity, then certainly we are able to manage the risk. So if we talk about the women in DRR, they are considered to be most vulnerable from all segments of the society. If we go by the data, during the Indian Ocean tsunami in 2004, or about the cyclone in Gorky in Bangladesh, or about the Nepal earthquake, or even the advanced countries like the France, everywhere, if we find that the women, a huge percentage of women, a very big chunk of the people, women, they are very much affected by the disasters. Reasons may be many. Maybe their vulnerability is primarily due to the biological reasons, or the social reasons, or the cultural factors. There can be many attributes which can be assigned to this kind of vulnerability. It may be social, it may be biological, it may be cultural, psychological, because women's safety and security requirements are different in many ways. For example, suppose a disaster happens and people are uprooted and they are moved to some shelters Again, the women have different kind of requirements. Their the water sanitization and hygiene requirements are different. Their other biological requirements are different. Their safety and security requirements are much intensive, of course, for the children and aged people also. Their requirements are much intensive in comparison to the male counterparts. And therefore, it is very important that whatever policies or programs we design, they have given due importance to these requirements. Next, please.
Yeah.
And when we talk about the multi-stakeholder engagement, which is considered to be the fundamental element of the disaster risk governance, women is an important stakeholder. And therefore, they have a very significant role to play in disaster response and recovery at all stages, of course. If we take their perspective, their knowledge, their gender sensitive sensibilities into account, I'm quite sure that the disaster risk governance may have a very inclusive kind of policies and programs. Similarly, the special needs and requirements of women can be taken into the consideration. And not only that, we can have many type of innovations in our program implementations in disaster risk governance and the risk management if we take women's perspective into account. As Dr. Rachna Dua has rightly said, that if women are involved, they bring about a different kind of initiatives and innovations and policies at fore, and which are very useful. Yeah, Ashish, next one, please. Yeah, next slide, please. So we all are agreeing to the fact, we all are at common ground that women should be involved. But what is the status check? The participation of women in planning, designing, implementing, and monitoring emergency program and rehabilitation project is still on a low-key profile. We do not consider that women also have their source of earning, which could be affected by the disaster event, and they need to be not only rehabilitated at the biological or the domestic level, but also it's important to provide them economic social safety net against the disaster. Women are not being considered as important stakeholders. The sufficient efforts are not put in place for engaging them in leadership roles in disaster risk management program. And not very too surprising that in last 2 decades, it has been found that in India, women do not have technical knowledge in general, and particularly about the prediction of natural disaster occurrences. So this is the common understanding and a common belief system of all those who are involved in the decision making with respect to DRM. But do you feel that is it true? Next slide, please. If you see the current pandemic situation, the biggest disaster in our memory, the women leaders have fared much better than men in handling COVID-19 situation. If we see Angela Merkel from Germany, or Ms. Ardern from New Zealand, or Mette Frederiksen, Danish Prime Minister, or Ms. Sheikh Hasina Wazir from Bangladesh, a recent study published in the Center for Economic Policy Research and the World Economic Forum, it revealed that the policy measures in the initial 3 months of the pandemic in female-led countries save nearly 2 times more lives than those run by the male leaderships, despite having similar number of cases. So what do you think? What makes them different? What makes their leadership style different than their male counterparts? Yeah, next slide, Ashish, please. So certainly there is something which makes difference. Women, their leadership style, their empathy, their inclusive thinking, and the sort of say their sensibilities are different. They try to involve everyone while they design the programs. Their leadership is participative leadership style, and which is something which bring different kind of sensibilities to programs. If we come to India, suppose if we take the example of Andhra Pradesh, of course, under the political leadership of Mr. Reddy, a very capable Chief Secretary of Andhra Pradesh, Ms. Neelam Sahni, who has recently retired on December 31st, she has taken so good measures. During the earlier state of the pandemic itself, she invoked the Indian Epidemic Disease Act. AP has taken the testing at different level. In the southern India, this is the one state which has done the 1 lakh tests per million people, and which is the highest amongst the large states in the country. And even today, they are faring much better with respect to the mortality. The fatality rate in Andhra Pradesh is 0.84, which is considerably less. So there is something which points to the women leadership. Ashish, please, next slide. And this is about the leadership. Now, if we talk about the workforce, we have 14 lakh Anganwadi workers and 13 lakh Anganwadi helpers. They have been the front runner. They have been the front force, the first-hand responder during the COVID-19 case. If we come to the ASHA, the accredited social health activist, or the ASHA, it means in Sanskrit the hope. So their name is synonymous of hope, and they are the hope for the people who are affected by the COVID-19, and they have been the foot soldiers. They have been involved in the testing drive of India. Not only that, the women teachers who have adopted the online teaching so well, and I'm not talking about the urban teachers, I'm talking about the teachers in the rural settings. The nurses, the pandemics, the doctors, the researchers for the vaccine research program. If you try to find out about the details of the researchers, there are many, many women who are involved in this. The women administrators at all levels, right from the top, the central government to the panchayat, village panchayat level, the politicians, they all have participated in the current pandemic situation. And results show that the women administrators have fared so very well. Just now I have given you the example of Andhra Pradesh, the Chief Secretary of Andhra Pradesh, Mrs. Neelam Sahni. So the on-ground realities are really different than our prevalent belief system about women participation, or the women knowledge, or the understanding or the capabilities of the women when we involve them in the TRM. Next slide, please, Ashish. So what is thought of is that there is a social science. Go to the next slide, Ashish. I will take up the limiting factors next. No, the slide number 10, please. 11. Slide number 11, please. Okay, so you have loaded the old version, no issue. If we go to the slide, which is having the photograph, Ashish, please. Yeah, thank you. So if there is a Pygmalion effect, which is a psychological phenomena, and wherein it is considered that the high expectations lead to improved performance in a given area. And I put a bet on the high expectations with women. If we put a lot of faith and belief on women, we put high expectation, then nothing can restrain them. There is no hurdle in their outperformance. This photograph is of the first non-stop flight from San Francisco to Bangalore, flown by 4 women pilots, and it was all women crew. And they flew over the North Pole, covering a distance of 16,000 kilometers. What a wonderful feat. So if we come to the limiting factors, please go to the slide, limiting factors. Yeah, thank you. So if we go to the limiting factors, we can categorize it into the socio-cultural factors, socio-economic factors, individual characteristic of women, and legal and institutional factors. These are considered to be limiting factors for women growth in all areas in general, and in particular in the DRR arena. So the cultural, the patriarchal culture of our country, or in general, the patriarchal culture, religious beliefs, the household size where of women, and their workload, they are categorized as their socio-cultural constraints. Similarly, the household income is categorized under the social economy constraint category. The level of their education and the self-interest are put as their individual characteristic. And the political environment, policies, legislatures, and so on and so forth, they are considered to be as limiting factor from the perspective of institutional and the legal framework. What do you feel? What could be done for these to remove these limiting factors? We can have a very, very long details which could run over years, hours and hours of sessions talking about the patriarchal culture, the religious belief system and different religions, so on and so forth. But it's easier to go for the low-hanging fruits. It's easier to go for the empowerment through the education, through involvement of the women and in the STEM, the science, technology, education and math education, involving them in all arena of socio-economical policies, giving them right kind of safety and security net. So let me go to the slide where I'm talking about multiple empowering things, like the participatory decision-making. We can involve in them in decision-making. This can be in, at all levels. If we talk about the community-based management programs, they can be involved at village level, at all levels, at municipal corporation, at the urban level, planning of disaster management, district and village level plans, we can involve them. We can involve them in multiple programs being run by the state, central, and the district level administrations. They can collaborate with their innate wisdom on various aspects. The strengthening women's network. During the pandemic, we have seen that women networks came forward in many ways. They entered into preparation of mask. They entered into mass preparation of mask. They entered into preparation of safety kits. They have entered into the preparation of and the reading of all those X-rays, medical reports, testing, and so on and so forth. They can be very supportive in community resilience programs. And I think a thrust or focus should be given in designing women-centric projects and missions. There are new policies which touch upon empowering women through different missions and programs. A similar kind of program can be designed also for the disaster risk management involving women. There could be women-centric projects. And of course, the women can be involved in the legal practices, and they could be given the legal entitlement. And in all, they can certainly be resourceful partners. So this is all what I want to say, considering the time limitations. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for such a beautiful deliberations on your side and about the women leadership on DRR. And thank you very much for your valuable time through this webinar. Now, I think we are moving towards the end of our session. So I'll take few questions from the participants. The first question is, how can we ensure greater participation of women in decision making, even after the improvement in educational, economic, and legislative initiatives? We still seem to not making any headway. It is asked to anyone if anyone
Priti
can answer.
ma'am, you would like to make some comments?
Yeah, so I think I'm very positive about involvement of women in the decision-making process. We see quite a good number of women are involved in policy making, and I have placed the involvement of women during recent pandemic. It's going to be a game changer, in my opinion. So I'm quite hopeful that a large number of women participants we are going to see in recent time to come.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am. Now, next question is, in a country like ours where patriarchy overrules, how can we as a women of the youth can make sure relief and rescue in a disastrous situation?
I just would like to add, what I said in my talk,
Yes,
the involvement of youth. Of course, that is why we are here. Platforms like this, they are making us more aware. So basically, education will play a very important role, because now the baton is in the hands of youth. So training, I talked about capacity building. So they have to be, trained for that. And so this involves, education. So educational institutions, and I talked about curriculum. So it has to be incorporated on curriculum, and it's already been done, and things are moving, but we need more to do. So I'm sure our youth and those who are present also will, think about it. And I'm sure with right kind of training, education, capacity can be built up. So that can be taken up. Yes, can be promoted. Yes.
And you also said, ma'am, that everything can't be left over to the governments to do everything.
Yes.
This community capacity building you talked about, where equal participation of women should be ensured. So that way, like these young girls who are attending these programs, we can't them disaster management experts, but definitely when they go back, they will go back as disaster management champions.
Yes.
So in the societies they are going back, they are going to impart this knowledge that they have gathered today here. And that way we are slowly and gradually we are going to, overnight things are not going to change. But slowly progress will be observed and seen. So that way.
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. Our next question is about some colleges offer disaster management as a whole subject for studies in MA like this, and many central universities. So can you please tell what are the scopes if we opt disaster management? This is about career prospects.
Rachna ma'am.
Yeah,
any inputs?
In fact, Professor Girish sir also can respond, but
please.
I think, yeah, but
sir is not here.
Yeah.
Achha, we can request Professor Anil. I think he's the right person. Anil sir.
So of course, if we are talking about if he is not there and perhaps not connected,
then just
yeah,
you can add on something. I'll call.
Yeah. So Professor Anil.
Ma'am, Anil sir will just join in a second. He's just gone to inform you.
I think sir is not available. So the thing is, that is the right question. I mean, in this segment, probably after having, done some kinds of relative course with respect to these things, probably people don't find jobs. And if you see this incident response system in our country, then the roles and responsibilities given to the government agencies, government officers, they are from different backgrounds. I mean, it can be from medical, from police, from law and order, and policymakers and things like that. So that way, somebody doing a course in disaster management and getting a job right away, probably that situation has not arrived in our country. But definitely, universities and colleges are coming up with diploma and degree courses, and definitely we are moving towards that direction. If we definitely want a disaster resilient society in times to come, we have to provide jobs to these young chaps, young minds, so that they can be encouraged to do these kinds of courses more and more in number.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing, with Dr. Ashish. After doing this course, which the person is talking about, can they join NIDM? Or like, what is the criteria of joining? Because we have this full, institute, National Institute of Disaster Management. So who all can join? Like after doing this course.
See, the options are like this. Say, as interns, they can join anytime, 2 to 3 months, so that their career, CV can be enhanced like anything. They will learn from here. We will learn from them as well. But we don't provide any monetary benefit with respect to that. But when they are seen in NIDM as working with our faculties and other people, when the positions like young professional, like our colleague, this Ms. Shilki, is a young professional, young scientist over here. So we have lots of young professional positions. Time to time, if people can go to our website, www.nidm.gov.in, they will find in the recruitment section lots of opportunities with respect to that. Then there are positions of consultants, junior consultant, senior consultant, with good remunerations. Okay. So and now we have another southern campus also in South Vijayawada. So a number of posts are coming up. So they have to keep on seeing our website with respect to that. But definitely, these are not permanent positions. These are 1 year term basis positions that can be enhanced to second year, third year. But definitely, as far as the question, the crux of the question is like that: if I complete an MBA or MA or do PhD in this field, then whether I am going to get a job or not. So definitely, a job can't be assured as such right now. There will be different segments and different competitive examinations through which these people have to come forward and get roles and responsibilities in this sector. You know that.
Yes.
Thank you very much, sir, for enlightening this issue. I'll take one last question. In a country, if when the main breadwinner is killed during the disaster, which stereotypically is a man, women often need to seek outside for employment, and especially girls are pulled from schools to take care of their households. How is it actually possible for women, other than policies and programs in pen and paper, to take upon the leadership in real world, where they can not even given the right to say or educate themselves? How can we ensure greater participation of women?
Divam, you want to add something?
Yeah, so what pandemic has done, the best thing to the world is that digital economy proliferation. women can really use this as an opportunity. This has opened a golden gate for all of us. People can sit at home, can learn anything with the immense opportunities open through the online platforms. They can self-graduate themselves, they can self-employ themselves. There are many Government of India, Digital India policies now available. The only thing is required is you have a good internet connection and you have a fire in your belly to expand. Then now in this scenario, the sky is the limit for everyone.
Absolutely, ma'am. So with these words, hello.
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 If the breadwinner dies.
Hello? Actually, yeah. Nagarajan sir, this is your question, I think.
No, sir, I answered. In some states, if the breadwinner dies, the family, the school-going children are given compensation, cash compensation, and provided scholarships.
Yeah. Okay.
If the head of the family or the breadwinner dies, the school-going children are given cash compensations and the scholarships to continue the education without any hindrance, sir.
Yeah.
That can be adapted.
Yes.
That is also there. Also for even the breadwinner is not dead. Young. I mean, this one single child. If it is a girl, then that single child is also provided full education, free of any this fee or anything. So these kinds of schemes are there. Actually, this is that limit of organizing a webinar. We are given 20 minutes time. My presentation included lots of government schemes with respect to women and girl child, which can be provided to them, that are there, but because of not having knowledge at proper level, proper platform to voice their opinions, they many times they don't know the schemes and things that central governments, subnational level, state governments, or district level governments are employing these schemes. So there are many schemes, I'd like to say.
Yeah. So thank you, Ashish. But I would like to say only one thing, that if women do the whole hand holding with women, then no one can stop them. Why one should be dependent on anyone should come and tell about the policies and programs? Why not be there for each other and inform that, look, these many things are already available which you can do, and once you start doing, once you go out, then there is no limitation. You can be torch bearer for others, and this is how the chain follows.
Yes.
Thank you very much, all the panelists, for this wonderful presentations and discussions on this third Prime Minister's third agenda on role of women in DRR. And now that we are moving towards the end of our webinar, I request Dr. Rachna Dua ma'am to kindly give few closing remarks. Over to you, ma'am.
Well, as far as today's webinar is concerned, and I'm sure as far as myself is concerned, I'm taking a few very good points to naturally convey them to my students. So that is one thing. And so many examples were shared by Professor Girish and Mr. Ashish and Preeti, and so that I have become more aware now. And so many things need to be done. Of course, the questions raised here today are very valid. We are talking about vulnerabilities and about if a male member dies, how. So we need to know more about it. I think NIDM is set up, but we need to know more about it. Perhaps little bit more awareness and knowledge, and we have to find out the ways and means how to implement that. That is more important. Things are very good, our policy is good, but how to implement that? And of course, we are living in a society where we all know women are more vulnerable. So why I'm focusing more on youth and
Ma'am, unmute कीजिए please आपको.
Am I audible now? Perhaps for a second,
Yes,
I don't know.
the connection was lost. Yeah,
okay, no,
perhaps
it's
for a
okay
second,
now.
the connection. So, so we need to be more aware of the policy framework and whatever courses are offered by NIDM. But I'm sure, I'm positive, as Preeti also said. Yeah, I'm sure positive things are happening. It will take time, right? So we should not think that nothing is happening, and we should not be negative about it. And perhaps in future, I look forward, as I've been told also, for a workshop from NIDM. And so thank you once again for giving us this opportunity to hold the webinar, and thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for such a beautiful remarks. I request Akash Upadhyay, sir, to kindly deliver vote of thanks. Sir, over to you. Kindly unmute.
आकाश जी अनम्यूट कर लीजिएगा.
Thank you, Ms. Silky. It is indeed a matter of honor and a great privilege for me to propose a vote of thanks for this wonderful and enriching webinar that was jointly organized by Department of Geography, Shyama Prasad Mukherji College, and National Institute of Disaster Management, Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India. At the outset, I, Akash Upadhyay, on behalf of Department of Geography, Shyama Prasad Mukherji College, University of Delhi, would like to thank NIDM for collaborating for the webinar, which is just a start of a great partnership between two premier organizations. Thank you, NIDM. Now, I would like to extend a very heartily vote of thanks to our Honorable ED Sir, NIDM, Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal, for his gracious presence and his words of wisdom. Thank you, sir. No event is complete without the guidance and blessings of our principal ma'am, Dr. Sadhna Sharma, who has been a great support and a motivating force behind the webinar. Thank you, ma'am. Now, I would like to thank Professor Anil Gupta, sir, for his keynote address to the gathering. Professor Anil Gupta, he is known to be, very much simple and very much energetic during the talk, wherever he delivers his talk. Even today, he was very much energetic and very much simple. It was very much inspiring and motivating to all of us in this challenging time. Thank you, sir, for your words. Further, I would like to thank all my speakers, starting with Dr. Ganeshwar Mishra for his excellent deliberation on women and DRR. I'm sure the participants from across the country, they would have a lot of takeaways from your talk. Thank you, sir. I would like to further thank Dr. Preeti Banjal ma'am for her informative and engaging talk on women's leadership and disaster and how we can go about in the future. Thank you, ma'am. Now, moving on, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude and appreciation to Mr. Ashish Panda sir for all the hard work and dedication he put in as a coordinator, as a faculty member, and a speaker for the day. There was a lot to learn from his talk today. There were many case studies that he presented, and I'm sure it would benefit all the participants attending the webinar. Thank you so much, sir. Next, I personally would like to thank and mention deep sense of gratitude to our teacher in charge, Dr. Rachna Dua, for the hard work she put in for the webinar. She has been tirelessly working for last 3 days in communicating information to conduct the webinar successfully. She has been the real motivating force for successfully organizing the webinar. Thank you, ma'am, for your constant support, encouragement, and as a coordinator, and also as a speaker for the day, where you had a lot of things to say about the young minds and young people, young girl participation in disaster and things and the way ahead. I'm sure the house must have many takeaways from your talk. Thank you, ma'am. Now, I would like to thank Ms. Silky for great coordination before the webinar and wonderfully moderating the session. Thank you, Ms. Silky. Further, I would like to thank the entire faculty members of Department of Geography for their inputs and suggestions from time to time. You have been a great support system throughout. And special thank to Ankur sir for taking care of registration in all the communication aspects. Thank you, sir. Special mention to our technical team and technical support system headed by Dr. Manish from Computer Science Department and Sarabjit ji from our resource room. Thank you, sir, for all the technical support you provided to us. Last but not the least, I would like to thank all the participants from across the country. We nearly had around 250 registrations across the country for a webinar. In a short period of time, we only had 2 days of time for registration and the response was overwhelming. Thank you all for such an overwhelming response, and the webinar would not have been successful without the participation of people like you all. Thank you all for joining. Now I would like to conclude by saying that every end is just a new beginning and every experience is a learning experience. Thank you all for joining the webinar, and I would like to request all the participants to fill the feedback form. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Akash sir.
Thank you.
Akash ji, thank you for your collaborating skills, great
And
facilitation
coordinating.
for this program, and all the pains you took for organizing this event under the able guidance of Dr. Rachna ma'am. And thank you to all the lovely participants. Thank you so much. God bless. Be safe.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
We will be closing the feedback link at 4 p.m. So kindly fill it before 4 p.m.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very
Preeti
much.
ma'am. Thank you.
Thank
Preeti
you.
ma'am.
ये तो बोलो